good.
Okay. Alexandre Costa-Leite is an associate professor of philosophy and logic at the University of Brasília, PhD in logic from Switzerland. He is a visiting scholar at the Department of Philosophy of the City University of New York, associate researcher at the Center for Logic, Epistemology, and History of Science at the State University of Campinas, and invited research at the Dusseldorf Center for Logic and Philosophy in Germany. His main researches and interests are in non-classical logic and metaphysics, the Fermi paradox, big history and future studies, and philosophy and technology. Very fascinating combination. Alexander, you want to go ahead?
All
Are you
right.
able to?
I'm trying to share my screen. And
Okay. I think so. I think if you go to the green button,
yeah,
I think maybe at the bottom, and then
let
you
me
pick.
check it. All right, let me
You can
see
pick the whole
here.
window, or yep. Okay, I think you found it.
Is
Excellent.
that all right? Let me.
We're seeing. Yep. Good. Very good.
Very good. All right. So thanks a lot, David, for organizing this fascinating meeting. I hope to follow the Big History Association from now on. This is my first time in the meeting. Daniel Barreiros uh, showed me the meeting. I didn't know, despite the fact that I work basically alone in the issue of big history. So the title of my talk is Temporal Structures for Big History, Metrics, and Reasoning. So the first point to be noted is that my interest with this special subject like big history occurred, especially because I'm engaged in studies on the Fermi paradox. And while I was studying the Fermi paradox, I was like somewhat connected with, of course, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and also with the field of futures studies, especially because we find many symmetries between futures studies and big history. These connections with the search or with SETI, they appeared to me, especially because I realized that if in the past, in our past light cone, a kind of extraterrestrial intelligence appeared and exists up to now, what this civilization would be able to perform from the technological viewpoint. For instance, uh, check it out here, this quote from Freeman Dyson. We start from the notion that the time scale for industrial and technical development of these beings, extraterrestrial beings, is likely to be very short in comparison with the time scale of stellar evolution. It is therefore overwhelmingly probable that any such beings observed by us will have been in existence for millions of years and will have already reached a technological level surpassing ours by many orders of magnitude. So will have been in existence for millions of years. If we accept, in some sense, that the SETI premise is true, then we could infer that this kind of ETIs, they are in our past light cone for many long time. And this kind of quote and this kind of reasoning we can also find here, for instance, in Bracewell, the famous book, The Galactic Club. No one, quote, no one can foresee what will be achieved in a century hence. And yet there may be somewhere in the universe communities that passed through our level of technology 1 million years ago. Try to picture them today. So these are very fascinating connections with big history. From the study of Fermi paradox, we find these important connections with big history and also with future studies. The reason is the following. When we look the future of humanity, we can figure out a situation of very high technological development. But what we can figure out in our deep future probably has already occurred in our past light cone, if there are ETIs. So this is the point which connects both big history, the Fermi paradox, and futures studies. And what I propose now is that the idea, I will propose now two ideas. The standard, I realized also that the standard, what I call standard or classical big history, is based on empirical evidence. But we can see that empirical possibility, which is the underlying possibility for empirical evidence, has very expressive limits. And I conjecture that big history should be based on the broader concept of logical possibility. And this is very complicated indeed because uh, logical possibility contains empirical possibility. Everything which is empirically possible is, of course, logically possible, but the converse is not true. So I think we should enlarge our perspective on big history, incorporating logical possibility instead of empirical possibility. And the fact is that there are many orbits, something I call orbits of logics, in the sense that there are infinite logics. And logical possibility is always defined with respect to a given logic. But if we have infinitely many logics, how will we manage this situation? And this is just a way to see that a logic in general, from the very abstract perspective, is just a set of generic objects and the consequence relation. And here I put something which can be found in this article published last year, which shows how a plurality of orbits can be generated from a classical or a given logic. But I will not bother you with this technical formalities, but the point is, my idea is that a logic gives rise to a pattern of reasoning, but we have infinite logics, so we have infinite patterns of reasoning, and the standard best light cone we use is based on classical logic. So the idea is that if we have a plurality of logics, we should also have a plurality of past light cones. And here, the idea of orbits is just to show that there is a central logic and it has infinitely many orbits. Each one here has a very different perspective. If you check the first clause here, if a given logic does not prove psi, the anti-logic proves psi, which means that it converts truth and falsity and vice versa. And the same for this logic here, which converts truths and makes the negation of these truths true. These are abstractions in logic, but the point is that these abstractions force us to accommodate this plurality of logics in big history. When we are studying big history, we see that the light cone from the Big Bang up to recently is entirely classical. And I think this is a very strong limitation for our results. So I argue that it's feasible to enlarge big history, taking orbits of logics into consideration. And to do that, we need some tools. And the one very interesting tool is the plausibility, cones of plausibility. These cones were originally conceived by Charles Taylor in a report for the U.S. Army War College, and further recent studies can be found in this paper recently published in Futures, How to Visualize Futures Studies Concepts, Revisions of the Futures Counts. There's a huge literature on this. In big history, I know that Joseph Vorus also has worked with these cones. And some metrics can also be introduced in the cones. And the idea is to build orbital cones based on orbits of logics. And these metrics can be introduced in different ways. I mentioned here a way which I found very interesting by Fred Adams and Greg Laughlin in this paper, A Dying Universe. And I also have a paper on this subject called Measuring and Classifying Levels of Futures in this journal. And the idea is that if you check it out here, the orbital cones, when we're in big history, we study, you can think this yellow point as the current year, 2025, and this is our future, and this is our past. This is one form. If you put the Big Bang in the yellow point, so our cone is this right one, the center one, based on the logic L. Notice here, it's based in logical means. What it means that we're using as underlying pattern of reasoning all classical validities which appeared in philosophy, math, and history since, let's say, Aristotle. We are using the principle of non-contradiction to reason, for instance. And the standard big history approach is based on the principle of non-contradiction as it considers empirical possibility as a main kind of clue to perform inquiries into the nature of big history. However, notice here I put these orbital cones. This in blue is the anti-cone. It's based in the anti-logic, a logic which in this cone here you can say the future, the past, whatever. But here, all validities, all truths are converted into falsities. Here we have other abstractions, and of course, these orbital cones, they are able to provide a unifying tool for big history. Of course, I know this is very, very abstract, and I think, but if we want to reach comprehension and understanding of our deep and profound past, we have to incorporate also these possible orbits and all these other possible cones. Of course, there is a relation with multiverse. If you want, you can put a relation with multiverse. And my idea is this. I want to propose that we enlarge our conception of history, allowing different cones not necessarily compatible with the standard cone used in bigger history, which is based on empirical evidence. These cones are based on logical possibility, which is always in relation to a given logic. For instance, the principle of non-contradiction is not valid in this cone, but oh, sorry, it's valid in this cone, but it's not valid in this cone, in this cone. So in order to have a broader perspective, maybe in the deep future of humanity, we should try to introduce these other dimensions to reason about big history. In metrics, the title of the talk also contained the notion of metrics. Metrics are ways to put time in cones. The basic one is this metric by Fred Adams and Laughlin, cosmological decade. A cosmological decade, it's a logarithm, but it takes as basis 10. But for humanity, this is like a destruction of human dreams. We cannot say that we are moving towards future taking base 10 or eta here is the cosmological decade. This eta means the cosmological decade which are now. So according to regular science, now we would be like in the 11th cosmological decade. So I think this cosmological decade by Fred Adams put a matrix in cones. Of course, yeah, whatever we do for the future can be done for the past, but this is
Alexander,
too
could you
much.
begin wrapping up, please?
All right.
About 15 minutes.
And then this is the final slide. And this is, if we put 10 eta, I think this is too much for humanity. So I propose to replace this cosmological decade by what I call sigma years. And sigma years is just an adaptation for this scale. And the sigma years we have, of course, we can select, as you noticed, David, in a private message, we can select different kinds of sigma and add t, and this would put metrics in all those orbits of cones. So thank you guys for your attention, and that's all.
Excellent, Alexander. I think there's a lot there to think about and discuss. I think wrote earlier to you just about the similarities between some of our thoughts on this. Open it up for discussion and questions. So I just wanted to say on that last slide that last point of looking at humanity, that T there is, if you look at the singularity trend kind of acceleration, it's around this time, and you kind of can measure factors from this. So the one that I proposed and others have gotten close to similar factors, that sigma is kind of like a factor of 3, closer to the square root of 10. And we can measure, the number of factors. So in the universe, it's something like 17 or 18. So we can kind of measure, in a relatively small segments, this pattern. And so this is kind of a geometric pattern, and one that kind of this accelerating trend tends to follow. I thought I saw a hand up. Someone have a hand
All
up?
right. So I have to study the articles you mentioned, Dave, and maybe we can prepare something for the future.
Yes, very good. Um, so in terms of the SETI, Clement Vidal used to be a member. He's with Evo Devo now, that group, but also studying SETI at University of Berkeley. He's written some very nice things, very open for discussion on that. So that's one person kind of in the big history field that's looking at some SETI things. And then Ian Crawford organized or helped organize that conference a number of years ago, kind of on SETI and big history. And just on your logics, it kind of reminded me of John Wheeler, physicist who had a lot of great students underneath him, always provoking some weird views of physics. And he was the one that said, to Feynman, well, what you consider all paths, even if they go, reverse time and don't satisfy energy conservation just for a small amount of time. And so, he also had the one electron theory of the universe, saying that universe might just have one electron, and it would travel back and forth in time. There's a good YouTube video if you just look it up. At first, I thought, "Oh no, that can't be," but the way that he interpreted it is very provoking, and I think maybe not necessarily that these things are true, but very interesting to look at them and kind of get some perspectives from them.
From the theoretical and conceptual perspective, it's very important to take this plurality into consideration, I think. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Any other comments or questions on there?
Yesterday, Nick Nielsen said he would like to see history in a much more abstract way. Now I think he got too much, no?
No, I think this is just the right level of abstraction to pursue a more general framework within which big history can be developed.
All right.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you very much, Alexander.
Thank you all.